You didn't stumble upon this by chance. What's about to start isn't just any video, it's a vibrational code, a calling. And if you felt something shift just by hearing that sentence, it's because your field has already started to respond. Most people still try to change their lives from the outside in, but Thoth knew the opposite secret. You don't change the world through effort. You change it through frequency, and not just any frequency, but a sustained frequency, one capable of dissolving blocks without force. This audiobook activates a vibration that almost no one holds, because it takes courage, it takes presence, and that's why few make it to the end. But those who do feel something that can never be forgotten. Take a breath now, because what's beginning to move inside you in this moment is the frequency Thoth hid in the spaces between sound and silence. But if you leave now, you'll miss the exact point where everything reorganizes inside, and the world begins to respond outside. Introduction. The point where everything starts to change. You're about to begin an experience that goes beyond simple spiritual content. This audiobook wasn't made to entertain you, nor to repeat what you've already heard in books or videos out there. It was made to provoke you, to pierce layers of your mind you might not even know were there. And more than that, it was built to touch a vibration that already exists in you, but may have been asleep for a long time. It's important to understand that what's about to happen is not just a series of beautiful ideas. What's activating now is a code, an ancestral vibrational code that Thoth left behind to be accessed only by those who were ready. And if you're here listening to this now, it's not by accident. It's because something has already started moving inside you. It might not be clear yet, but this silent vibration is the first sign that your energetic field has begun the restructuring process. You know that moment when you start to feel like something in life doesn't quite fit anymore? When the same routines feel empty, when the tiredness isn't physical anymore, but existential. That's not weakness. That's a vibrational calling. It's the beginning of a break with the old pattern. And that break only happens when the soul realizes it's time to remember who it is. In this audiobook, you won't find ready-made formulas or empty promises, but you'll find something far more powerful, a mirror, an energetic reflection that will clearly show you where you're vibrating, what you're putting out, and why, so often, your outer reality doesn't match your inner intention. Because it's not about what you want, it's about what you silently vibrate. Since ancient Egypt, initiates have known that all transformation begins from the inside out. That vibration isn't forced, it's aligned. And Thoth, master of wisdom, understood that like no one else. He left fragments of that knowledge in symbols, in words, in silence. But that silence was never empty, it was encoded. And today, that code is being decoded by those who are ready for more than just information. They're ready for presence. While most people are still on autopilot, trying to fix life from the outside, those who awaken learn to return to the center. And the center is not a place, it's a vibration, an internal state that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It doesn't matter if the world is in chaos. When your field is anchored, reality around you starts to shift through resonance, not effort. You've probably noticed there are people who walk into a room and change the energy with their presence alone. They don't need to speak loudly or assert themselves. They just are. That's stabilized vibration, and it's not some mystical or supernatural thing. It's energetic science. It's inner mastery. And that's what this audiobook starts to deliver to you now. But for that, you need courage. Because activating your true vibration means letting the false layers fall away. It requires presence, not performance. And most people run from that encounter. Because looking at yourself without masks takes more strength than facing the outside world. But you wouldn't be hearing this if you weren't ready. So breathe. Feel the air coming in. This moment now, this silence between one word and the next, That's where everything begins. It's not about technique or belief. It's about a field, an inner space that begins to align as awareness expands. And from this moment on, what once felt difficult begins to dissolve, because true vibration doesn't come from effort, it comes from clarity. And that clarity begins to reveal itself now. But the real impact happens when you recognize what's fragmenting your vibration and learn to reorganize everything from the root of your mental field. Chapter 1. The silent flow that comes before awakening. Some changes don't make noise. They don't announce themselves with thunder, don't demand attention, don't call out. They happen in silence, deep inside you, as if the universe itself were breathing differently. And suddenly, you realize something is out of place. But it's not outside, it's inside. You wake up with a strange feeling, like you're living the same life, in the same places, with the same people, but something doesn't fit like it used to. Conversations lose their spark, places feel emptier. And that routine that once felt tolerable now feels suffocating. It's not depression, it's not boredom. It's like your field has started to move to a new frequency, and the rest of the world hasn't caught on yet. This is the beginning, the opening of the vibrational portal, and almost no one recognizes this moment when it happens. Most people feel like they're becoming strange, confused, disconnected. But what's really happening is that you've started to tune out of the collective frequency to access your true field. But that doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with clear signs. It comes with a different silence, with a subtle slowing of time, with coincidences that seem too small to call signs, but too big to ignore. Ancient traditions had a name for this moment, the whisper of the spirit, because it doesn't come as a command. It comes as a calm calling, a desire to be in more silence, to step away from the noise, to notice things that used to go unnoticed. It's as if the soul starts communicating through different channels, and those still trapped in the fast pace of the rational mind simply can't hear it. In this audiobook, we're naming what almost no one explains. That feeling of being out of place isn't a mistake. It's the symptom of a deep realignment. A moment when your inner frequency starts moving in another direction and the world around hasn't caught up yet. It's like changing the radio station while the volume is still low. You feel something is playing, but you can't quite hear the full melody yet. This is the field beginning to respond. And the most curious thing is that in this early stage, the mind can't comprehend what's happening, and it shouldn't. Because vibrational awakening doesn't start with logic. It starts with perception, with vague feelings, hunches, restlessness. And those who try to understand everything right away with the intellect block the process. That's why so many people feel the calling but run back to their old programming, because the ego hates what it can't control. And the whisper of the spirit never comes with certainty. It comes with sensations. And trusting those sensations is the first test for anyone shifting from the programmed mind frequency to the awakened soul vibration. What happens in this phase is too subtle to be taught with words, but those who go through it know. Time changes pace. Encounters feel orchestrated by something bigger. The random sentences you overhear seem meant just for you. It's not magic. It's vibrational resonance. The field is starting to vibrate in a way that attracts different experiences, even if everything on the outside still looks the same. And that's exactly where most people turn back. Because the mind wants guarantees, but vibration doesn't offer guarantees. It offers frequency. It offers sensations that challenge logic and demand presence, surrender, listening. If you try to force understanding, the connection breaks. But if you allow the field to unfold without interference, a new reality starts forming in silence, And that reality doesn't happen by chance. It happens when you recognize that internal shift as part of a larger transition, when you accept that you don't need to understand everything with words, because what's happening to you is beyond language. It's vibrating on another level. And that level is where awakening begins building a new energetic identity. Some call this an existential crisis. Others call it emptiness. But the truth is, that space opening up inside you isn't absence. It's preparation. It's your field making room for something that doesn't have form yet, but already has presence. And if you've made it this far, listening to this chapter closely, it's because that space has already opened in you, even if just a little. Don't ignore the synchronicities. Don't doubt the intuition that brought you here, because the field vibrates before the mind understands. And those who learn to hear that silent calling begin to access a frequency most people never experience, because they never stop to listen to what only silence can reveal. But what comes next is the moment when that frequency starts to be broken by something even more subtle, the mental noise that fragments the vibration before it can fully stabilize. Chapter 2. The first lie that broke your energy. You grew up hearing you had to be light all the time. That high vibration was a constant state of positivity, of gratitude, of permanent smiles. That any negative emotion was a sign of spiritual failure. And little by little, a lie was planted inside you, a lie that seemed harmless, but turned into an energetic prison. This was the first vibrational sabotage you suffered, the idea that feeling sadness, anger, or fear distanced you from spirituality. And the cruelest part of this distortion is that it didn't just weaken you. It made you feel guilty for being human. You were trained to hide your pain with pretty phrases, to cover the emptiness with mantras, to mask your exhaustion with affirmations of strength. And while you were pretending to be light, your vibrational field was silently collapsing. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you vibrate with truth. And the truth, in this case, is that the attempt to appear elevated destroys real vibration more than any negative emotion. Because when you force yourself to be okay all the time, a part of you starts to rot inside, a part that needed to be heard, felt, welcomed, and was pushed down like it was some kind of mistake to be fixed. Pop spirituality made it seem like evolving means being above pain, that rising up means ignoring everything that bothers you. But Thoth already said that true light isn't the absence of shadow. It's the awareness that moves through the shadow without getting lost. Pretending to be at peace doesn't sustain any field. On the contrary, that pretending is a subtle vibrational poison, because what you try to hide turns into energetic noise, and noise disrupts everything. That's why you've probably felt that burnout after trying to stay high vibe for too long. Because keeping up a mask drains more energy than facing the pain head on. You repeat affirmations, try to stay positive, do rituals, and still, something feels unstable, fragile, fake. That's because your vibration is trying to uphold an image, not a real frequency. This is the root of spiritual guilt, a feeling that silently eats away. Because even when you're feeling low, you think you're failing. And you start judging yourself for not maintaining the ideal vibrational level. But who set that standard? Who told you that being spiritual means never suffering? That idea didn't come from the wise ones. It came from the modern manipulation of what it means to be evolved. The ancient schools never taught that pain was the problem. On the contrary, in ancient Egypt, suffering was seen as a portal, in Tibet as an opportunity for purification. Among the Essenes, pain was a natural part of transmutation. None of these traditions preached emotional repression as a path to enlightenment, but today, they sell it to you as the solution. And the price you pay is steep, because when you deny your emotions, you fragment your energy. You try to rise while carrying a hidden weight that only grows heavier, precisely because it's hidden. The soul doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. And as long as you're trying to seem better than you really are, your vibration will keep dropping. Because the energetic field isn't powered by appearances. It's shaped by coherence. And coherence starts when you stop betraying yourself. That's the hidden reason why so many people fluctuate. They do everything right. Meditate, cleanse their crystals, practice gratitude, but inside they're in conflict. They feel anger but won't admit it. They're sad but smile anyway. They hold grudges but pretend to be compassionate, and all of this creates a field contaminated by vibrational incoherence. Thoth called this the false shine, the energy that looks like light but is created by effort, the vibration that tries to sustain itself through spiritual performance, not inner truth. And he warned, false shine is darker than darkness itself, because while darkness invites you to look, false shine convinces you to stay blind. At this point in the journey, the most powerful thing you can do is not try to vibe high. It's to accept what's alive in you right now. If it's sadness, feel it. If it's fear, face it. If it's exhaustion, rest. Real vibration comes from truth, not from trying to fit some unreachable spiritual ideal. You don't need to force yourself out of what you're feeling. You need to learn how to be with it without identifying, without fighting, without running away. Because it's in that conscious presence that the field begins to reorganize itself. When you stop resisting, the flow returns. When you stop pretending, the light comes in, but not as a performance, as presence. There's no elevated vibrational field that can stand on denial. Every true rise comes from integration. From fully accepting your human condition as part of your spiritual process. And when you understand that, something releases. The pressure to appear dissolves. The internal demand quiets down, and your field begins to align with your real essence. But there's still one detail almost no one sees. Even when you're being real, there's an invisible force working against your vibration. A subtle fragmentation that doesn't come from emotion, but from the mind. A mind trained to overthink, to judge, to speed up. And it's that speeding up that throws the field off before it can even stabilize. Chapter 3. The vibrational gear that shapes matter. There's an invisible gear turning behind everything you call reality. Every object around you, every situation you experience, every coincidence that happens, none of it appeared out of nowhere. There's a frequency behind form, and that frequency is what gives birth to the visible world. Most people still believe reality is shaped by effort, positive thinking, or desire. But that's just the surface. What really shapes your life is the vibrational field you maintain without even realizing. And this is one of the most hidden keys in ancient knowledge. Vibration comes before matter. Civilizations like the Egyptians, the Vedic sages, the Andean peoples, and even the Taoists knew this for thousands of years. They didn't see the universe as a physical, mechanical thing, but as a vibrational, sensitive, intelligent organism. And that intelligence doesn't respond to appearance, it responds to the coherence of the frequency you emit. Thoth encoded this knowledge. He didn't hand out answers in words, but in symbols, proportions, geometric patterns, and vibrational alignments. His teachings were never about blind faith. They were maps for reorganizing the internal energetic field, which in turn reorganizes the external field through resonance. Today, modern science is just beginning to touch the edge of that wisdom. Quantum physics already admits that what we call matter isn't solid. It's vibrations at microscopic levels, particles that shift based on observation. That means your attention shapes how reality behaves. But Thoth knew this long before the atom was even a concept. To him, reality was just a reflection of the frequency you hold in the invisible field. When we talk about organized frequency, we're not just talking about feeling good. We're talking about a cohesive, aligned, steady vibration. A field that pulses in harmony with who you really are, not who you pretend to be. That's why so many people want things, think positively, do rituals, and still live the same loops. Because the desire is in one frequency, and the real vibration is in another. And the universe always responds to the real frequency, not to what you wish you felt. Imagine your life as a holographic projection. What you see, touch, and experience are just side effects of your vibrational output. When there's inner disorganization, everything outside seems messy. When your field is fragmented, nothing holds up for long. But when the vibration organizes, even without effort, things start to flow. The right people show up. Doors open. Ideas come at just the right time. Because your field has started emitting a frequency that matches what you want to live, not just wish for. This is the breaking point between people who understand spirituality as practice and those who live it as a state. And that state can't be forced. It comes from inner stability. When your thoughts, emotions, body, and presence start vibrating in unison, a gear activates. A gear that doesn't turn alone. It's connected to the greater field, and the greater field responds with absolute precision. It's not about controlling the outer world. It's about adjusting the core, about harmonizing the source, because when you learn to work your frequency consciously, matter responds like a reflection. You don't need to chase things. They start being drawn in by something way beyond your physical or mental effort. They come because the right vibration was activated and held. And that's where true power begins to emerge. A power that doesn't shout, doesn't impose, doesn't force. It just vibrates. And by vibrating, it transforms. Because all creation begins with frequency. Everything that exists was, first, pure vibration. And when that vibration was organized, it took form. That's how the ancients built monuments, temples, and entire cultures that resonated with the energy of the cosmos. They knew aligning their personal frequency with universal cycles created more harmonious realities. Today, we've forgotten that. We try to control everything with logic, planning, effort. But as long as the internal field is out of sync, nothing external holds up for long. Because reality is like an echo of your vibration. When you understand this, you start acting differently. You stop trying to fix the effects and begin observing the vibrational causes. Every conflict, every loss, every repeating pattern, all of it is a message from the field. Not to punish you, but to show you where your vibration is out of tune. And from that point on, something shifts. You start listening to life in a different way. The signs become clearer. Intuition sharpens. Situations start realigning, not because you're forcing anything, but because your presence now carries a frequency that organizes everything around it. But there's still something keeping this gear from turning fully. A vibrational emission that happens even when you're silent. An invisible field that speaks louder than any word, and most people are emitting it without realizing. Chapter 4. The signal that never turns off. You don't need to do anything to emit a vibration. You don't have to talk, move, or even think. Vibration happens because you exist. Your mere presence already changes the environment, already imprints a field around you. It's like a transmitter that never shuts off. At every moment, your body, your mind, and your emotions are sending signals to the universe, even while you sleep. It's hard to believe this when you live in a world that only values what can be seen, touched, measured, or explained. But the energetic reality doesn't depend on your belief to operate. It's working right now, in this very moment, while you're listening to this audiobook. You're emitting, vibrating. And that silent vibration is shaping what happens around you. Thoth called this active presence, a state where your energetic field speaks louder than any words. And the most incredible thing is, almost no one pays attention to this. Most people are so distracted trying to keep up appearances, solve problems, plan the future, or defend themselves from the past, that they forget that while all that's going on, their frequency never stops transmitting. This automatic transmission is what keeps reality stuck. Because even if your mind says you want to change, to succeed, to heal or evolve, if your field keeps emitting old patterns, that's what the universe is going to pick up. Life doesn't respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you effortlessly vibrate in your natural state. And your natural state was shaped by years of unconscious repetition. Since childhood, your frequency has been conditioned. Words you heard, emotions you couldn't express, traumas that were ignored, beliefs you accepted without question. All of that created a vibrational base that operates like a background program, and that program stays active even when you think you're in control. That's why so many people live in cycles. They move to new places, switch jobs, start new relationships, but keep attracting the same situations because the signal stays the same. And without changing the field, nothing really changes. You can paint the walls, swap out the furniture, redecorate everything on the outside, but if your inner signal keeps broadcasting the same patterns, reality will always reorganize itself to reflect that. Thoth understood this with precision. He taught that the field is sovereign, that before trying to transform the world, a person must become aware of the frequency they're emitting. Because everything starts there, at the point where you realize you're vibrating all the time, even when you don't want to, even when you don't notice. This turning point happens when you understand that your frequency isn't just a result of what happens to you. It's a language, an energetic signature shaping your reality like an invisible sculptor. And that sculptor doesn't use words, it uses vibration. It interprets what you truly feel, what you deeply believe, what you repeat without realizing it. The good news is that this signal can be reorganized, but not with force, not with control. It starts to change when you start observing, when you stop identifying with mental noise and begin to recognize the field as something alive, present, real. That's the moment mastery begins. And mastery here doesn't mean repression, it means awareness, noticing what's vibrating, feeling what's being transmitted, and from that, consciously choosing what you want to sustain. That's where Thoth's legacy becomes a practical tool. He didn't talk about changing reality through the power of thought. He taught how to access the exact point where vibration stabilizes effortlessly, where the field is no longer reactive, but creative, where you stop emitting inherited, copied, repeated frequencies and start transmitting the truth of who you actually are. But to reach that point, you need to pass through the densest layer of your frequency, the one that vibrates without your permission, the one that's been programmed for so long it feels natural, but it's not. And that layer has a name. It's the sped-up mental pattern, the fragmented mind, the constant flow of thoughts that never stops and creates enough noise to keep your vibration from fully organizing. It's that noise that fragments the signal before it can sustain a new reality. It's that silent fragmentation that causes your frequency to stay anchored in the past, even when you're trying to change. Chapter 5. The first enemy, the scattered mind. The chaos you see outside doesn't start outside. It's the continuation of an inner movement, And that movement begins with what no one is paying attention to, the disordered rhythm of your mind. The modern mind wasn't shaped to contemplate. It was conditioned to race. Overthinking became a virtue. Overanalyzing became a responsibility. But there's an invisible cost being paid for that, your vibrational field. A mind that jumps from topic to topic, that relives the past while trying to control the future, that constantly judges, compares, corrects, and demands, is creating noise. A silent noise that weakens your frequency more than any negative emotion. This noise doesn't scream, doesn't stand out, but it's there, creating cracks in the base of your energetic field. Because every thought generates a vibration. And when those thoughts are disorganized, fragmented, scattered, they throw off everything you're trying to sustain energetically. You might try meditating, you might repeat mantras, use techniques, try every method. But while your mind is operating in this hyperactive state, nothing will hold. The field might adjust for a moment, but then it collapses again, because the thinking doesn't stop. And when it doesn't stop, it pushes energy in contradictory directions. Thoth understood this with a clarity that most modern seekers still lack. To him, silence wasn't a state without sound. It was a state without fragmentation. A space where the mind stops trying to control and starts to observe. Where the inner flow is guided by awareness, not by impulse. Imagine your mind like a river. When it's calm, everything that passes through it is reflected clearly. But when it's agitated, nothing can be seen. The water becomes murky, restless, confused. That's the energetic field of someone who overthinks without awareness. The frequency becomes distorted, broken, dissolved in noises that go unnoticed, but affect everything. This accelerated mental pattern is so common, it seems normal. But it's the first enemy for anyone trying to raise their vibration for real. Because unless you silence this overflow of automatic thinking, your field won't be able to fully restructure. And it's important to understand, this isn't about stopping thought. That's impossible. It's about learning to observe thought without getting dragged by it. About watching your mind work without identifying with everything it produces. The mind creates images, replays voices, dramatizes possibilities, reopens old wounds, but you no longer need to enter each of those scenes. You can sit and watch like you're watching a movie. You can let it talk, but without believing that everything it says is true. That detachment is the beginning of vibrational mastery. Because when you stop reacting to every thought, your vibration begins to organize itself. The field finds a silent order. Energy returns to center. And that return to center is where transformation begins. But it's hard to access that space while the mind is running on autopilot. That's why you need a practice. Something to break that accelerated flow. A simple decision that can restructure your field in minutes. An ancient technique Thoth used to interrupt mental noise and make space for vibration to stabilize in peace. And that's what you're about to learn now. Chapter 6. The Hidden Power of Sustained Emotion. Have you ever felt a moment of peace so deep it seemed to touch a place beyond words? That moment of pure love where time stood still? Or that random burst of gratitude as if your whole body was saying, "Thank you," for no reason at all. But after just a few seconds, it's gone. You're back in the rush. Someone pisses you off. Fear creeps back in. Anxiety tightens again. And that emotion that felt so magical slips through the cracks of your attention. That's where the difference between feeling and sustaining lies. Most people chase elevated emotions like they're short-term rewards. They do practices, listen to music, take deep breaths, access that good state, and lose it right after. Because they were taught to see emotion as a temporary reaction, something that comes and goes. That depends on what's happening outside. But the ancients knew a truth that changes everything. Emotion is vibration in motion. And if you learn to keep that vibration alive long enough, it becomes part of who you are. Thoth taught that emotion isn't just an inner state, it's a command. A code that sends precise signals to the field around you: gratitude, love, compassion, reverence. These aren't just noble feelings. They're encoded frequencies with structures capable of organizing the field. They have form. They have geometry. They reorganize particles. They change the density around you. But that only happens with consistency. It's no use feeling gratitude for a minute and then spending the rest of the day complaining. It's no use feeling love in a ritual and then going back to vibrating fear in your daily life. The field doesn't respond to your temporary intention. It responds to the pattern you sustain. And that takes practice. It's not about forcing an emotional state or pretending to feel something that isn't real. It's about cultivating enough presence to avoid getting sucked back into the same old triggers. It's easy to feel love when everything's good. Harder to hold on to it during criticism. It's easy to feel gratitude after a win. Harder to sustain it when nothing seems to flow. But that's exactly where your vibration starts to become identity. When you hold a high emotion even in the middle of chaos, you're sending a clear signal to the field. This is my real frequency now. And the field believes you, because it doesn't analyze whether your feelings make sense. It doesn't ask if your life is good enough to justify that state. It just responds. Vibration is language. And sustained emotion is the most powerful sentence you can write into reality. Many masters miss this detail. They knew a lot, but didn't sustain anything. Knowledge without coherence doesn't change the field. But true emotion, sustained with presence, restructures everything. Because you stop being a spectator of your own vibration and become its source. Most people just react. If something good happens, they feel joy. If something bad happens, they feel anger. That's the automatic cycle. The real shift happens when you decide to maintain an inner state even when the world pulls you the other way. That's when you stop being programmed and start becoming the programmer. This emotional stability doesn't come from denial, not from saying everything's fine when it's not. It comes from deeply recognizing emotion as frequency, not as a label. Love isn't a romantic feeling. Love is vibrational coherence. It's a force that holds steady. Gratitude isn't a response to a gift. It's an energetic choice to recognize value even in the absence. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's alignment with something greater, even when the world gets louder. And Thoth taught this directly. The emotion you can sustain becomes a new energetic signature. And your signature determines the kind of response you'll get from life. Because everything is vibrating, and everything that vibrates responds. When you become emotionally stable, without hardening, when you hold your frequency with honesty, without isolating, when you're able to move through your ups and downs while holding a field of love, presence, silent gratitude, something shifts. You no longer feel separate from things. You feel in tune, aligned, part of a flow that doesn't demand effort. That simply continues because you stop stepping out of your own vibration. But there's an even subtler detail. Sustaining emotion is only possible in one specific place. A place where the mind doesn't interfere, where the body is grounded, where energy organizes. That place isn't in the past or the future. It can only be accessed in one point. Chapter 7. The eternal present where everything vibrates in purity. You were trained to think time is a line, that there's a before, a now, and an after, that the past shaped you and the future awaits. But that linear idea, which seems so logical, is one of the greatest vibrational traps ever created, Because while you live split between what's already gone and what hasn't arrived, your energy fragments. Your field weakens. Your vibration loses power. Most people aren't really present. They exist in a physical body, but their consciousness is drifting through memories and projections. And that creates a kind of failure in the energetic field, a draining of vital force in the only point where it truly pulses, the now. Thoth taught that the present isn't just a moment. It's a vibrational space, a sacred place that can't be accessed by a distracted mind. Only those who silence the echoes of the past and release the anxiety of the future can cross into this subtle portal where everything vibrates in purity. It's in that space that vibration becomes whole, because it's not contaminated by regrets, traumas, worries, or expectations. It's complete, it's alive, it's free. But almost no one holds that state because we've been conditioned to associate presence with passivity, as if being here, now, means doing nothing. But presence isn't inertia, it's action with awareness. It's feeling with fullness. It's looking at what's right in front of you without old filters or anxious projections. When you enter that state, truly enter, something starts to happen in your field. Mental tension eases, the body relaxes, the heartbeat steadies, the internal rhythm shifts, vibration naturally rises, without force, without techniques, without needing external stimulation, because the now is the only place where reality can be shaped. The ancients knew this. It's in that state that spontaneous healings occurred, that intuition arose out of nowhere, that masters could look at a glass of water and shift its structure. They didn't do it because they were special. They did it because they were anchored in the eternal present, where time doesn't get in the way, where the field doesn't hesitate. This vibrational purity only reveals itself in the undivided moment, and it can't be accessed through theory. It has to be lived. It has to be felt. It has to be sustained with the same awareness you use to breathe. The now isn't a goal. It's a return. It's the place where your energy stops scattering, where it organizes, where it begins to respond precisely to what you emit. When you're truly present, you notice the moment's details like everything's in high definition. Colors are more vivid, sounds gain depth, bodily sensations become sharper. You feel the vibration of what used to go unnoticed because awareness has returned to your center. And it's in that center that frequency gets purified. It doesn't need to be forcefully cleansed. It simply reveals itself when the mind stops running from the now. The now is where the field rebuilds. There is no true healing outside the present, because every process of energetic restoration begins with presence. Every authentic manifestation begins with presence. Every real elevation begins with presence. But there's a hidden vibrational key in this state, something the masters kept secret because they knew not everyone is ready to clearly see what sustains the now in a lasting way. Chapter 8. The Invisible Test. When the field tests the master, you can say all the right words. You can repeat powerful affirmations. You can even meditate every day. But if what you feel, what you think, and what you do aren't vibrating in the same direction, the field won't respond. That's the most common and most invisible mistake. Mistake. Vibrational incoherence doesn't make noise, but it breaks everything down from within. You say with your mouth that you want peace, but keep feeding inner arguments. You claim to trust the flow, but your choices are driven by fear. You want abundance, but you vibrate scarcity in how you see yourself. And then you wonder why reality doesn't change. But reality doesn't respond to the surface. It responds to the vibrational coherence of the whole. Thoth said alignment isn't something you do, it's something you live. Because there's a point where body, mind, and soul must stop being separate parts and become one single frequency. When what you think, feel, and do fall into sync, something powerful happens. The field stops wavering, it stabilizes. It recognizes you as a congruent source, and that's when it begins to obey. That's the beginning of true magnetism. The field understands that you're not just wishing, you're sustaining, you're living, you're vibrating what you say with energetic integrity. Most people live in fragments. They think one thing, feel another, and do something completely different. That's not their fault. It's disconnection. And that disconnection creates interference. It's like trying to tune into a radio station with 3 different signals at once. The sound doesn't come through clearly. The frequency doesn't manifest. Reality then hesitates. Because your field is hesitating. But when there's coherence, vibration amplifies. It stops scattering. And when it stops scattering, it begins to shape. This is the silent portal that almost no one crosses. Most try to change the world with force, with techniques, with repetition, but the universe only responds to a stable, deep, and congruent vibration. And congruence isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about aligning what you want with what you practice. It's about making small actions that confirm the frequency you want to hold. When you reach that level of alignment, even words become less important. The field already understands, because you've become the vibrational affirmation itself. You are the command, you are the code, and that's when reality stops resisting. But when this alignment starts to solidify, something curious happens. You start to feel that something shifted. Synchronicities increase, intuition gets clearer. You notice the vibration more stable. It seems like finally, you've figured it out. But then comes the test. People you thought you'd outgrown return. Emotions you swore you'd healed surface out of nowhere. Challenging situations repeat. At first glance, it seems like everything's backtracking, that you failed, that your vibration dropped. But no, this isn't a setback. It's confirmation. Thoth called this moment the field's test, the exact point where the new frequency, as it consolidates, starts to push everything misaligned up to the surface. Because light doesn't eliminate shadow by denial, it reveals it. It's when your vibration begins to become irreversible that the field tests your stability. Your old self resists. The old patterns try to come back. Not because you failed, but because the old energy is being purged. It's being forced out. It's like when you stir a glass with sediment, the dirt rises before it gets cleared. And that's the moment many people give up. They think they've regressed, that it was all for nothing. But in truth, they were one step away from their deepest vibrational breakthrough. Because those who hold the frequency in the middle of instability activate something almost no one reaches, the level of vibration that no longer depends on the external. A state where the field already recognizes your energetic signature as dominant. That's the point where reality stops testing you and starts obeying. But that moment only solidifies when you choose to hold the new field even when everything seems to fall apart. When you vibrate peace even in chaos. When you hold love even in pain. When you remain in coherence even without visible results. This is the true initiation. The outer world is just the final reflection. What matters now is, will you hold it? Because those who do, cross the next threshold. Chapter 9. The state where the field becomes unbreakable. There comes a point on this path where everything starts to shift quietly. Doubts no longer hurt. Emotions stop exploding. And what once took effort now simply vibrates. You no longer need to repeat, no longer need to control, because what you practice so many times now lives within you. It became your second skin, your natural tone. It's when the field stops wavering because there's no more friction between what you want and what you are. This is where you enter the true state of irreversible vibration, a place where coherence is no longer a goal, it's your breath. In this state, you no longer seek elevation, you become elevation itself. The field, upon recognizing this stability, responds instantly. People around you start to feel it, even if they don't know why. Spaces align. Situations that once took effort now flow. And you realize the frequency is no longer a choice. It's a continuous reflection. It's the point where technique disappears, rituals cease, practice dissolves, because what was external has been absorbed. Thoth's teaching at this stage reveals its deepest essence. True vibration can't be taught, it can only be embodied. You're no longer trying to attract, no longer trying to manifest, you're just vibrating, and that's enough. But it's at this exact point, when the field finally seems stable, that the greatest challenge comes, not out there, inside. As the new vibration becomes stable, something unexpected starts to happen. A part of you, the one that survived for so many years on fear, control, and comparison, starts to panic. Not out of malice, but because it knows it's about to vanish. This collapse doesn't come with big explosions. It comes in silence. A subtle discomfort, a nameless sadness, a longing for something you don't even want anymore. And in that confusing space where the new hasn't fully landed and the old clings to one last chance, the old self makes its final move. You start hearing old thoughts resurfacing. It's always going to be hard. This isn't for me. Maybe I'm just fooling myself. But now you know that's not true. It's just the final cry of an identity built on pain and survival, and like every last cry, it sounds louder than it should. But Thoth already said, the collapse is the sign of liberation. It's like the last tremor before the foundation is rebuilt. At this point, you only need to hold steady, not fight, not run, just allow what's no longer needed to go. This process may feel uncomfortable, even confusing, but it's sacred. Because this is where you finally let go of the version that kept you from vibrating freely. This is where you stop carrying the weight of who you once thought you had to be. It's in this collapse that the new begins to breathe. The body starts responding differently. The field expands. The vibration aligns with what's true. And the soul, once suffocated under layers of protection, finally emerges. Not as an idea, but as living presence. This is when you start to inhabit the frequency that's always existed, but was buried under the noise of who you thought you were. That collapse, as strange as it seems, is a rebirth, and those who pass through that void with courage never go back to who they were. Chapter 10. The final adjustment, the micro leaks of the field. After walking so far, it's natural to think the field is already sealed, but there's a subtlety that escapes most. It's the almost imperceptible noises, that quick thought that carries judgment, the automatic distraction that seems harmless but weakens the signal, the impulsive gesture, the offhand word that shouldn't have been said. Tiny leaks that don't break the field, but slowly drain it. These micro leaks aren't visible to the ordinary eye, and that's why they're dangerous. They hide behind good intentions, in inherited habits, in conditioned reactions. And no matter how strong the vibration is, if these points aren't adjusted, the field can't hold at its highest level. Thoth knew this. That's why he left a kind of silent instruction, a subtle practice that involves no words, no elaborate rituals. It's like a vibrational seal, a code of energetic conduct. He called it the return to the original frequency, and he said that this frequency requires no effort, only clean presence. This final adjustment is more than a cleanse. It's a refinement. It's where you learn to notice the details beginners ignore. It's at this point you develop the inner eye, the one that sees misalignments before they become collapse. Here, every choice becomes conscious. Every thought is seen before it becomes noise. Every action is realigned before it opens gaps in the field. It's like tuning an instrument that already plays well, but now needs to play flawlessly. And it's in this fully tuned state that the field finally reaches full stability. No more noise, no more effort, just pure, consistent, continuous vibration. But there's one secret that enhances this state like no other technique. An ancestral code that's always been with you, and now it will be consciously activated. The breath is the thread between worlds, between body and spirit, between thought and silence, between the invisible and what manifests. All your life, you've been breathing without noticing. But Thoth said, "Those who breathe unconsciously live without mastery." Because air isn't just air, it carries vibration. It conducts the sound of the soul, and when used wisely, it becomes a vehicle for transcendence. Thoth didn't teach breathing like we do today. His method was simple, yet precise. Each pause, each rhythm, each hold activated specific points in the field. He said breath was like the beat of a sacred drum, able to invoke, cleanse, and anchor. And the most amazing part, it doesn't take years of practice. This technique doesn't depend on posture or words, just a specific rhythm, a pace that aligns all three levels of existence in minutes: physical, mental, and spiritual. That's when you realize breathing isn't just living, it's creating coherence, creating alignment, creating presence. This breath doesn't just calm, it structures the field, seals the leaks, harmonizes inner chaos, and when applied with awareness, it activates something few have ever felt. The field begins to pulse on its own. The body falls into rhythm with the whole, and the soul, once asleep, begins to lead. Chapter 11. The forgotten technique is revealed. You've made it here because you've moved through all the layers of illusion, doubt, and mental effort. What used to be sought as a technique now begins to reveal itself as a state, not an unstable emotional state, but a solid, silent vibration that no longer depends on effort or circumstance. What many call Thoth's forbidden technique wasn't some secret hidden in a scroll or a formula memorized by wizards. It was a vibrational condition so refined, so pure, that it could only be perceived when the whole being entered coherence. The technique, in truth, was never a technique. It's a remembering, a return to the original form, to the exact point where the field stops oscillating and begins to generate. Here, there's no more space for noise or for doubt. Coherence becomes the foundation of everything. Every thought, every gesture, every intention vibrates on the same note. And it's that note that keeps the field whole, vibrant, unshakable. Thoth said that true mastery begins when silence stops being the absence of sound and becomes total presence, when you no longer try to control vibration because you are the very frequency that leads. And this is not an external achievement. It doesn't come through rituals, visualizations, or power words. It comes through the complete emptying of everything that was excess. At this point, what was practice dissolves. What was a quest comes to an end, and what was a fragment unites. The forgotten technique reveals itself at the exact moment you stop seeking it as a technique and start living it as identity. The cycle is complete, and the field is no longer an unstable reflection of the world. Now, the world responds to your field. You don't need to remind yourself to vibrate anymore. You've become the vibration itself. The presence that once wavered is now rooted, planted in every cell, in every thought, in every step. Everything starts aligning naturally. Synchronicities are no longer surprises. They're confirmations. Relationships shift, opportunities appear, obstacles dissolve. Not because you're forcing it, but because your frequency no longer attracts noise or resistance. What doesn't resonate drifts away. What vibrates in sync comes closer. This is the point where the invisible starts to lead the visible. Where silence guides, where desire fades because everything already is. There is no more fear, no more rush. The vibration has become permanent, and with it, so has manifestation. You vibrate with purity, and therefore, you create with precision. You're no longer at the mercy of the external, you are the center, the source, the transmitter, and everything you touch from now on will carry your vibration. It doesn't matter the place, the time, or the person, your frequency will be felt. Because when the soul remembers who it is, nothing can erase it. If you made it this far, it's because something has already begun to shift inside you. So write in the comments, I activate my permanent vibration. This isn't just a comment, it's a sign, a code, an energetic anchor that reinforces your presence in this field. And if you feel like this content transformed you in any way and want to help spread this vibration to the world, there's a link in the first pinned comment to support the channel directly. Or, if you prefer, just click the super thanks button right here on YouTube. Every act of support helps this message reach those who need it most. See you there. And before you go, pay attention. A special video has been prepared for you to continue this journey. It's already on your screen. Click now, and I'll meet you there, on an even deeper level of this frequency.